Well, I would say it has been step by step. Yeah, so once I finished my law studies, I entered the Attorney General's department. And after a 4-year stint there, I decided to get onto the private bar. And it was, I think, in the private bar that then I got involved also in human rights cases. And thereafter, I have defended certain people. And then thereafter, I was appointed to the Human Rights Commission. And while I was in the Human Rights Commission, I was asked to take over the chairmanship of the Office on Missing Persons. Because the appointing authorities wanted someone who was moderate, but who was also sensitive to these issues in that office. And thereafter, of course, because I was contesting the presidency of the Bar Association, I resigned from that office, and so now I'm here. But I would say the one thing is that my message would be that firstly, you must be diligent and dedicated to whatever you do. And I believe that a very important aspect is building trust with people and trust among whoever you work with. So it may be, even as a young person, it may be, if it is a young lawyer, building trust with the court, building trust with your colleagues, also with your clients. But for anyone who is not a lawyer, I think trust is very important. Wherever you work, whatever you do, you must be able to people should be able to have confidence in you. And I think that is what is important.
Wow.
And building trust involves being honest, truthful, being principled. And in my view, that is the way to go. And I very often, I tell law students, I say that the legal career is not a 2020. It is a test match, and you have to look at things in the long term, and not in the short term. Sometimes when you want to gain something in the short term, and you take shortcuts, that does not bear fruit, or it is sometimes short-lived. So these days, people talk about also people need money. And sometimes you are tempted to take shortcuts to earn quickly. But my belief is that it is not the shortcuts which are the best thing. But the best thing is to persevere and to create, to think in the long term of what you want to do and what you want to do in life. I believe ultimately you will be judged not on your wealth, not on what you own, but in how you have been able to change the lives of people. And that is the ultimate factor which I think will decide on whether a person's life has been fruitful or not. Well, I cannot say I have not had an experience where people have tried to tempt me to go the wrong way. But sometimes when you see things around you happening, sometimes you tend to think there are shortcuts you can take. For instance, we see people in different careers. Sometimes they run behind people in power. They don't want to speak out against what is wrong. So I have, right along, I have thought to myself that I will try. I'm not saying that I do everything perfectly, but I have tried to defend people who are relatively downtrodden or people who are in difficulty. So even in certain instances when I took on certain causes, those were not the most popular causes. And sometimes people, it is difficult because sometimes when you take up a cause which is not in vogue or which is not popular, maybe even among politicians, you sometimes get attacked. But so for instance, when I took the Office on Missing Persons, the chair of the Office on Missing Persons, I knew that was going to be a tough call because I knew that on one hand there were people there were the families of the disappeared who were not satisfied with the entire state machinery. But then there were others who thought it was that there was an attempt to sell out the country. So, but still, when I looked at the issues, I realized that there was a cause there, the cause of the families of the missing. So, in similar way, I think what is important is that you have to do what you think is right. Of course, when you do something which is right, there would be sometimes there can be you might be affected in certain things. You might not get certain privileges which you would have otherwise got. But then again, you have to weigh whether you accept certain privileges for the sake of compromising your principles, or whether you stick to your principles and hope that right will ultimately prevail. Well, I think ultimately, being as a lawyer, but in any other profession also, we ultimately deal with lives of people. So whether it is a lawyer or a doctor, you deal with lives of people. What you do affect people in the long term. So the message I give to juniors in my profession and others also is that whatever you do, you have to realize that it will have an impact on people. Not only on the people, perhaps not only on your client, but on a large, maybe on their families. So what you do, you have to understand that. And sometimes when you are in the legal sector, sometimes for instance, if you're prosecuting a person, what you do as a prosecutor affects not only the accused, but his family. So you have to be fair. If you are a judge, the decision you take has a wider impact on society, and that has to be taken note of. So my message is that not to, especially to members of the legal profession, that we must not just think that we are dealing with files, but that there is an entire story behind it, and there are people behind that, and it is necessary to be sensitive. I think in whatever career one is, that having empathy is absolutely important, and feeling for people.
Yeah.
There was this, when I was in the Office on Missing Persons, there was this young, there was an elderly lady who came with a young man who was a neighbor, somewhere from, I think, from Ruanwell or from Yatiantota. And she and her husband had visited the Coville on the night of July 24th, 1983. And the mob attacked the Coville and they were separated. She somehow, 2-3 days later, she found her way back home. The husband never returned. So this was 1983. She met me in 2018, 36 years later. And so she had heard on radio that there was this office, and she came and said, I want to know what happened to my husband. And she wears a red pottu. The red pottu is worn by Hindu ladies, married Hindu ladies. And then she told me in Sinhala, she said, "Sir, මට දැනගන්න ඕනේ මගේ මහත්තයාට මොකක්ද උනේ කියලා." එයා සමහර විට ජීවතුන් අතර නැතුව ඇති. හැබැයි මම ඒක දැනගන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම මම දැනගත්තොත් මට පුළුවන් දානයක් දෙන්න. That she can give alms. And then she said, if he is dead, I must erase the red pottu. So I have shared this story among there at a certain event which was attended by some of the highest in the country at present, at a particular book launch. Also, I shared this story about this lady, and because this is the story of many other people,
thousands
of people, and I think that is the sort of empathy which and that is the message we have to send, that these people need answers. But of course, we know that not in reality, not everyone can be given answers. But there is a necessity to feel for people. So whether it is the families of the missing or in any other situation, I think dealing with people with empathy, I think is very important. And in fact, we know that it is not only the war, but in the war also all sides. So, for instance, there are from the armed forces, there are missing, and there are the families of the armed forces are also part of this. So the OMP covered that too, the families of the missing, of those missing in action, and there are a huge number there. And during the 87-89 period in the south, in places like Hambantota, Madara, there were hundreds who were affected. So I think in my career or in the pathway which I have chosen, for me, I think the rule of law, respect for human rights is fundamental. And when you say rule of law, it is not the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law coupled with respect for fundamental human rights. And I think we have to have independent and strong institutions, but also institutions which are independent but also accountable for what they do. And accountable to the people, that is something which I care about, and which I believe that is the right path for this country. And I also believe that the people of this country, including professionals such as myself, we have a duty to speak the truth, and to speak the truth fearlessly, and whatever government may be in power, when things go wrong, to say things are wrong. I have even where the private sector of this country is concerned, I have criticism that when things are wrong, they don't voice their opinion adequately, although they voice that in private. So I believe the way forward is respect for institutions, strengthening institutions, independent institutions, strengthening the rule of law, and respecting the fundamental rights of the people of this country. Yeah, I think one of the complaints is that people don't want to get involved. A lot of people would prefer to mind their own business and look after their personal interests. Because they don't want to go beyond that, and quite reasonably so. Sometimes people might think, why should I take a position, because my family might be affected by this. If I lose my job, it is my family which is affected, and I think those are very reasonable, genuine concerns. But if in the long term, in the interest of everyone, I think people must voice their views. People must make their ideas known. People must take a stance on issues. Not taking a stance, remaining neutral is not good, because we know that all of us, you can't be insulated. We are all part of what happens to someone else impacts on us. What the quotation from John Donne, he says, no man is an island. We are all a part of the main. So in that way, I think if what affects other people will affect us one day. So if you see a person being harassed, being tortured, being beaten up by the police, you must be concerned, because one day it can happen to you. If you find a person who is killed in custody, it must concern you, because one day it can happen to you or to someone of yours. And in the long term, unless we take up a principled position on issues, if we don't fight for the rule of law, for the independence of the judiciary, for safeguarding our rights as citizens, And also speaking out against corruption. If we don't do those things, I think in the long term, all of us will suffer. But also I say that Sri Lanka, that people of Sri Lanka, the young people should not despair. You don't need to. It is my belief that Sri Lanka is a very resilient country, and Sri Lanka bounces back time and again. We have seen it. So it is, but it is in that spirit that I think people must voice their concerns. People must make their views known, and people must get involved. Young people must get involved in issues. If you take some countries where changes have occurred, it is where people decided to get involved and to make that change, and that is very important.